If you are new or you're visiting, my name is Matt and I get the joy of being the priest in this beautiful community. And as I don't think Laura said, but our vision here is to do two things really well. We want to be this multi-generational family that goes all out to see those who are sub-25 come to know who Jesus is. We want to go all out to see our under-25s, not just kind of aimlessly wander around the streets, as maybe you or I did, but kind of come to know who Jesus really is, to love him and to find their faith in him. And I've said it time and time again, and you'll be bored of me saying this, but 86% of the people in the church joined before the age of 25. 86%. We're absolutely all out for those guys to see them come to faith and come find out who Jesus really is. And secondly, we want to see miracles everywhere. I'm going to talk about this in 3 weeks' time. We want to be the miracle people in the middle of the city that sees miracle after miracle after miracle. And today is part 4 of a series that we've been looking at, the Prodigal Son. And it's based on the thoughts of this man, Henry Nouwen, a beautiful Catholic priest, founded a community for disabled adults, and also based on this beautiful Rembrandt painted. And the story goes, according to his book, that he was wandering, feeling a bit lost one day, and stumbled across the picture of the Prodigal Son painted by Rembrandt in St. Petersburg, and stared in it. And there he was reminded again of who God really was. Reminded of who he was. And this story is beautiful. It's it kind of seems on the surface like it's of two boys. The first, the younger brother, who says to his dad, "Dad, I want nothing to do with your family no more. I'm done with this family. I'm done with you guys. I'm done here." And so he says, I want my inheritance. And so the dad, this guy, gracefully sells half of everything he has. And he gives it to this younger brother. And this younger brother goes away, and it says he squanders it on drugs and drink and prostitutes and partying. And basically, he is like living the life that everyone wants to live. And he comes, basically sells everything. And he's a sellout, basically. But essentially, he gets broke. The money dries up. He runs out of money, and he goes to work for a pig farmer. Today, we're like, oh yeah, we love bacon. Back then, bacon and sausage is the best thing ever, right? Back then, it was the most disgraceful thing you could do. He has got the most shameful job that he could think of. And he goes out, and there's this famine, and he gets kind of starving, and he realizes that the pigs are eating better than he is. This sort of shameful kind of thing he's doing that those guys are eating better than he is. And actually, his father's servants are eating better than he is. And so he writes this big forgiveness speech. He's like, "Dad, forgive me. I've sinned against heaven and against you. Forgive me." And Jesus sort of tells the story of this guy who goes back to his dad and says, "Look, would you forgive me? Would you forgive me?" And this father runs to him, embraces him, and the language used is that he runs to his son. In order to run to a son in this day and age, he's wearing, you can see a kind of cassocky kind of figure, a cloak, and you have to pull up his cloak in order to run to his son, because he knows that if he doesn't get there first, the village are going to stone him, throw rocks at his head until he's dead. And so he runs to his son, and in doing so, he disgraces himself by showing his knees. It's the only way he can run. And he embraces this son, and the son's like, "Dad, forgive me. I've sinned against heaven, against you. I'm not worthy to be called." And the dad is like, "Shut up, you're home. Just come home." And they had this massive party, and as this massive party is happening, there's this older brother. This dude is in the field, and he can hear the partying going on, so he calls one of his servants and says, "Hey, what's going on here? What's this all about?" And the servant, I think, excitedly says, "Your brother is home. Your brother is home." And he just loses it. He's says to his dad, "I've been slaving for you. I've been slaving. You've never even given me anything. I've never been able to celebrate even with some friends. I'm in this field. I've been here all along, and you've never celebrated me." And so I think Jesus tells this story because there's two dangers of faith. The first is that we run away and we try and go our own way. And we try and do everything we want to do and live the pleasures that we want to live. And we kind of rebel against the house. And the second is that we work in the house, but we have a cold heart. And actually we work in the field and we work in the house and we work in our Father's presence, but actually there's no real relationship there. And so off the back of this, I just wondered, which brother do you feel like? And more importantly, if you were in the story do you think that you would receive this embrace? Like, how does this embrace feel to you? Like, this is God's heart for you. He wants to embrace you, regardless of whether you've wandered away and you're coming back, or whether you've been here all along and you kind of feel like the relationship is dead. And so I want to talk about the father today, this guy. He is really the main character. And I want to talk about him. And for some, when we talk about dads, it will be really hard. For others, it will be really easy. Yeah, last week, I saw this beautiful post of a friend of mine who, she lost her dad 10 years ago. And there's this beautiful post about, like, I wish my kids could have known you, and Dad, you were amazing. And there was these memories. Like, it was like, you know, those posts that, like, brings a tear to your eye. I was like, oh, that really hit home. You know, for some other people, when we talk about dads, it will be really painful because there will be significant dads who have screwed it up or, you know, like, caused real damage. You know, but whatever the relationship with our human father, I think God wants to rewrite the story. Where there's been absence or failure, I think God wants to rewrite that story. And where there are some amazing dads in this room, you know, perhaps, you know, like amazing dads, you know, God wants to build on that and show who he is. And so regardless of whether the story is emotionally draining or like the most beautiful thing, God wants to reinstate what fathership really looks like. And the first thing I want to say is that there is all love and there's no hate. I often think I meet people and they come in and they're kind of like, yeah, I don't really know how I'm going to sit with God. And I say to some people, like, I don't say it directly, but I kind of ask the question, like, what would this look like for you, this embrace? And they're like, I don't know whether that would really happen. And they list off a whole lot of reasons why. But I off the bat, I just want to say there is all love. You know, one of the things I really want to drill down into is that there is so much love for both sons. Each son has his failings. Each son has their flaws. But the consistent theme throughout is the love of the father. Neither is more loved. You know, neither is given a greater opportunity. They are both equally loved in equal measure. And so over the next couple of weeks, I want to ask a few questions. One, how do we know that we are loved? Like, how do you really know that you are loved? How can you get in the car on Monday morning and drive wherever you're going, sat there thinking, like, I know that I am loved? Secondly, how do we equip others to know that kind of love as well? And then finally, kind of a 2.1, how do we have the same level of commitment to intimacy as God does? Yeah, in a life that goes way beyond the mundaneness of kind of like faith, which sort of like we turn up on a Sunday and it's nice, but doesn't really change our life, to real genuine faith where we're called out of our comfort zones and seeing God at work, miracle after miracle every single day. Because I really believe that's the life that he wants for you and I, and that's the life that we're called to, not just to dabble in sort of spirituality on a Sunday morning, but it to be a divine, wholehearted kind of colliding of two worlds, of God's and ours, that calls us out of our comfort zones to have conversation after conversation, to see God at work, you know, like in the ordinary everyday places, the supermarket queues and in the office car park, and when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, and you know, like when you're in a Zoom waiting room, and those kind of places. I had this amazing conversation with this woman this week who, you know, we live in a vicarage and our house has had scaffolding around it. They said 1 week in August. Be up for 1 week in August. It's still there now. And I had this conversation with this woman, and she was like, are you really a vicar? And I was like, yeah, I'm really a vicar. She's like, you don't sound like a vicar. And I was like, no, that's fine. I'm really a vicar. And she's like, are you sure you're a vicar? I was like, yes, I'm sure that I'm a vicar. And she was like, but how does it work? And like, how does this, like, and we had this like really beautiful conversation about faith and life and meaning. And she was just trying to book in some work done to our house. Like, how do we get to that place where, you know, like we enable people to have this beautiful embrace? The term that Henry Nouwen uses, he says there is righteousness in the embrace. Righteousness meaning right relationship in. This is the place that we find ourselves. This is the place that we find a right relationship. It is nothing that we can do simply other than to let God embrace us. And then we get to respond. You know, there is a moment, a beautiful moment, where he talks about eternity merging and colliding with humanity. And he says this. if I can find the page. He says this. Time and eternity intersect, and approaching death and everlasting life, they touch each other. Sin and forgiveness embrace. The human and the divine become one. What Rembrandt's portrayal of the Father is such an irresistible power is that the most divine is captured in the most human. I see infinite compassion, unconditional love, everlasting forgiveness, divine realities emanating from a Father who is the creator of the universe. Here, both the human and the divine, the fragile and the powerful, the old and the eternally young are fully expressed. I see infinite compassion, unconditional love, everlasting forgiveness, divine realities. Yeah, what we're really talking about when we talk about this embrace is death being swallowed up. Now, this is not an amicable, sort of gentle bumping or nudging of the two. This is an aggressive seize of power, almost like sin and death and darkness are one kind of moving kind of platform. And as we step off of that into life and forgiveness, it doesn't just sort of gently sort of float away, but God nukes it into oblivion. And it's gone, it's properly gone, it's not coming back. It's an aggressive seize of power. Life aggressively seizes power over death and darkness. In this action, we see humanity colliding with the divine. This is the embrace and the action that only God can do. It is the complete and removal of all our wrongs. And in this embrace, it personifies the heart and the work of the Father. Immense power and stature holding the broken human frame, the broken human boy, each one of us. And therefore, he makes it beyond clear that we choose the level of intimacy that we want. It's funny, isn't it? Like the gentleness of God embraces this son and calls out to the second son. But the second son stands by, watching on. You know, like we talk about 2/3 of the story, don't we? There is one man who's still refusing the embrace, standing away from God, choosing his pride over this embrace. We get to choose the intimacy level that we want. And there's nothing we can do to earn it or deserve it. But it's a leaning in that we've got to look for. You know, the embrace of the Father comes not when the boys are perfect, and not when the boys have got it sorted, and not when their theology is all in line, and not when they think that they are in the right place to receive it. No. The embrace from the Father comes when they are still a long way away. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the gentleness of God is at the mercy of the pride of human beings. It's fascinating. You see where both boys approach, and both boys are welcomed and embraced. You know, Luke 15, verse 18. I'm on the wrong page. If you've got a Bible or a phone, would you turn there with me? Luke 15, verse 18. The younger brother says, I'll set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went back to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. This son who's disgraced him, this son who has rejected him, this son who has pushed him away as far as he possibly can. The embrace is so joyful, isn't it? The second one, he wasn't so far from home, but he wasn't living in the Father's presence. It says this in verse 25. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. Whose field? His field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called one of his servants and asked him, what is going on? Your brother has come home, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. But the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went and he pleaded with him. Father was pleading with him. Just ponder that moment. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. I've never disobeyed your orders, yet you've never even given me a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property, your prostitutes, come home, you kill the fattened calf for him. It's fascinating, the scene. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that our positioning and our posture will change the embrace that we receive. You know, I said, like being a vicar, we've got a large Devon vicarage. We're lucky, we've got a big house. And our house is like thin but tall. And we've got 3 floors. And my office is on the 2nd floor because, you know, I would never be able to work on the ground floor because there's too much going on and my mind would be all over the place. And what it means is that when the kids are kicking off, I'm like 2 floors removed. And so I can try and concentrate. And I remember this day, it must have been 3 years ago. Maybe 4 years ago when Phoebe was I think she was in reception. And I was trying to like do a bit of work. And she was kicking off, like trying to get to school. She's like throwing her shoes around, pulling her hair out of the bunches, like throwing like a bag on the floor. Like she was kicking off. She's like, I do not want to go to school. I do not want to go to school. You have those days with the kids. She's like, I'm not going. Like kicking off. And Laura's like, yes, you are. You're not staying home like this. You are going to school. And she's like kicking off. And eventually I kind of like wandered down the stairs and I was like, Phoebe, what's going on? Are you all right? Like, tell me what's happening. And she just looked at me and she's like, I'm not going to school. I was like, okay, cool. Like, you're going to school. Put your shoes back on and put your hair. And I said to her, like, can I give you a hug? And she said, fine. She put her hands down like this. And she just stared at me. I gave her a hug. I said, Daddy loves you. I love you. I love you, Phoebe. I love you, Phoebe. I love you, Phoebe. And she just like, angry face. She left screaming. Thought nothing of it. And did work, went to work and came back. And that afternoon, I remember sitting on my desk and I remember hearing them come up the road singing and joking and laughing. And they got into the house. I heard the door open, the door slammed really hard. And I was like, uh-oh. And I heard Phoebe running up the stairs. And before I could open the door to my office and get on my knees, she jumped and she cuddled in. And I said, Phoebe, I love you. Phoebe, I love you. Phoebe, I love you. Daddy loves you, Phoebe. And it's interesting, isn't it? I hugged her with the same love both times. Didn't love her any more or any less. I hugged her with the same amount of love both times. But her experience of my love was wildly different. One posture was ready to receive love, and the other stood adjacent to it. Our posture does have a part to play in the embrace that we receive from the Father. His posture to us never changes. In fact, actually, if his posture does change towards us, he ceases to be God. But our posture changes. His posture is unmovable. He is like, I love you. He's doing that thing that I did to Phoebe. He's embracing us consistently. And so I want to break out at this point, and I want to ask the question, how easy or difficult is it for you to believe that God's love for you is unconditional, regardless of your actions? So can we just break into 2s and 3s around us and ask that question? I think the Father wants his sons to know that however they've been looking for love, wherever they've been looking for it, whether it's been this younger brother in the faraway land, in the distant country with his friends leading him astray, or whether it be the older brother understanding contractual love earned by servitude, but there's no relationship, that his love has and always has been there. It was never fleeting for a moment. It was so present that it caused the Father to look to the distant, lands. It caused the Father to gaze into the distance, looking for his Son, even when he thought there was no way of him returning. Or turning the other way, it makes the older brother be loved in a way that he doesn't love his younger brother, spoken to tenderly when he's obnoxious. He isn't brutally put back in his place like he might do to other people, but he loves him with the same kind of love. His love is in equal measure with both brothers. Yet Jesus, I don't think he leaves us with the question which one is right or which one is more loved. Jesus leaves us with the question which one is returned. For Jesus, I think the most important question is which one is in the embrace. Think about it. He's saying this to people around him, like there are the religious leaders, there are like the scholars around him. There is some people that are not accepted by the religious leaders because of what they're doing and their lifestyle choices. And he's in this crowd and he's saying this. And really, this is controversial because Jesus is saying, you religious lot, you don't know what you're doing, but these guys have got it all wrong. They're in the embrace. They experience the embrace of the Father. See, what I really believe is if we believed what God says about himself, it would give us the security of this embrace in a whole new way. We'd approach tomorrow in a whole new kind of way. Neither brother is more loved. Neither brother has to fight for the attention of the Father. Neither brother could earn or lose the love that they are given. We need to choose the press that we believe about ourselves. The Father is clearly the one trying to pronounce his blessing over the two. One accepts and one rejects it. And he rejects it out of comparison and disgust. We have to come to the conclusion when we talk about God, that God's love is the most non-comparing, non-competitive force to ever have existed. It is ferocious in its declaration that all are seen and wanted and loved. And the more that we understand it, the more we are equipped to overcome the burden of comparison, because we are changed from this guy on the left looking down upon people to being the guy on his knees looking up into the face of the Father. See, what I love about God is that he wants you to enjoy his presence. He wants you to enjoy this embrace. Why? Because this is the space that God binds up our insecurities and our hurt and our longings and our rejections and our unhealthy understandings of ourselves. And we get accepted and we get to rewrite the knowledge of who we are in a daily place of just us and him in this embrace. I think people who don't follow Jesus see this life as a life of rules and regulations and getting it right and getting it wrong and having a kind of divine slap on the wrist. But I think this story, this narrative that Jesus tells is the clearest example of how God's life frees us to live a more fulfilling life, a more whole life, not beaten back brutally by the kind of brutal understanding of ourselves or the pressures around us or the fight to succeed or the need for other people's acceptance, but wholeheartedly loved by a God who wants to embrace us in a place where competition and comparison is eradicated, not out of a lack of wanting to do phenomenal things, but because our position is changed from wanting to achieve something great to impress or feeling important for recognition's sake, to being fulfilled because God fulfills our biggest drivers in our life in a place of real relational closeness with the Father. So here's kind of what I'm going to try and conclude today. I hope that this part of the journey, for you like it was for me, has been really powerful. As we start to question some of the things that we struggle with the older brother, the comparison, the feelings of unfairness, the kind of things that we feel are unjust, but they're not really unjust. The time where other people got the invite or it wasn't fair because. My real prayer as we explore these boys is that our jealousy would be undone. And it would be turning to joy as we see the heart of the Father. And as we, like this younger brother, walk away from God and say, God, I'm allowing you to speak to this bit of my life, but not this bit of my life. And sure, you can take this bit, but this bit is personal. And God, I really don't want to follow you here, but I'm happy to follow you here. That as we all walk away from the Father, as we all do, that we can see that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And that is found in this embrace, where we get ushered in and we see the joy of heaven because we're consumed by the opinion of a God who declares over us love after love after love after love, joy in the unmeasured love of God, where there is no more need, because where there is need, there is more poured out. And our only response is to enjoy an unlavish, unearned embrace of the Father, where he doesn't indulge in our self-destruction, but rather forges a new way forward, where we can see life beyond measure, knowing that we are intimately loved and made and cared for. So, my plea with you is this. Please posture yourself in a way where you can be embraced by God. And you can know that and feel that and find your identity and security in it. Can I ask that of you guys? Can you stand if you're able? We're gonna pray together.